Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Terry Hammons, owner of HomeStretch franchises in Cleveland, Washington, D.C., and Phoenix. They help homeowners and real estate professionals get properties market ready by handling tasks like clearing out old items, painting, and repairs. They also handle landscaping and move-out cleaning, ensuring that each home stands out in a competitive market. Terry has a long background in corporate finance law, having directed multi-billion-dollar litigation cases and ensuring compliance in high-level roles. After 2 decades in the legal sector, he transitioned into the real estate market to streamline how homes are prepared for sale. His team's commitment to quality has positioned HomeStretch as a one-stop solution for improving property value and expediting sales. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. Imagine being able to give your employees free access to doctors, therapists, and prescription meds. And here's the fun part. The program actually puts more money into your employees' pockets, and the company's too. One recent client was able to increase net profits by $900 per employee per year. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, franchise owner of HomeStretch in Cleveland, D.C., and Phoenix, Terry Hammons. Thanks for making the time to share your story today.
Awesome. Anthony, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
So, Terry, before we get into HomeStretch, you became general counsel of a publicly traded company at the age of 45, which was your career ambition. How did that feel?
Ironically, it happened to come at a time where I was in the deepest depression of my life. At the time, I didn't know it, but I suffered from bipolar disorder. And so this ambition, career aspiration that I had was somewhat of an arbitrary goal that I had set for myself early into my legal practice career. And I latched onto it and, basically went about achieving that goal just like I did everything else up until that point in time. That was all I knew. Just put your head down, work your ass off, and, the result will get there. And that's what I did. And so that's how I spent my entire working life, following the path that I had, laid before myself, the thing that allowed me to be not only successful in my academic life, but also my athletic life, and everything that had got me to that point. And so, unfortunately, I did not know that sort of the arbitrariness of it. And I never really thought about, setting goals for myself of just sort of being and just sort of going on a journey, so to speak. And my life, it was built around doing things and achieving this arbitrary title. And so when I finally got it, it was quite dissatisfying. And it wasn't,
because you think once you get to the quote unquote finish line that there's going to be a ticker tape parade, and you will finally feel fulfilled and whole and all that good stuff, and then you get there and it feels empty,
and it feels so empty. One of my good friends who I practiced with early in my career, he described it one way analogy. He said it's like a pie eating contest, and when you win, they give you more pie. and so it was just sort of like, oh, this is it. And so it was the first time. I didn't really think about it this way, but it was the first time it started hitting me that like success it's this temporary thing, and it's not really. It simply is. That's what it is. It's temporary. It's a temporary state of being. And then, so as soon as you get it, if you are like I am, or like I was anyway, you're always looking for, okay, now what's the next thing? I had put this goal out there, and when I got it, yeah, I had it, and it was just sort of like, oh, well, this sucks. Now I
got to move the goalposts.
I got to move the goalposts again. And it was one of those situations where probably 15 or 20 years earlier, my brother had been visiting me. I was living in London at the time, and he was visiting me. And I had told him about this goal of being a general counsel by the age of 45, which again, is completely arbitrary. I don't even know how I came up with that age, but, and he didn't tell me at that time, but subsequently he told me that when I had mentioned that to him, he thought to himself, I wonder what's going to happen to Terry when he gets that. Because he said, you always got exactly what you wanted. But it's like when you get that, which is going to be your like life's work, how he was wondering then how that was going to feel to me. And it turned out it wasn't so great.
Not so great. And then in the summer of 2023, you experienced something very troubling. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So that was when I subsequently learned that I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so, unfortunately, the way I found out, and this was approximately a year or so after I had retired from practicing law, I discovered it because I went through a very traumatic, psychotic break. And I was, moments away from harming myself. And I had to be subdued. Actually, I ended up being subdued by my brother, and my nephew. My brother is an Iraq war veteran, who knows like 3 martial arts. My nephew was a heavyweight state wrestler, state wrestling champ. And so it took both of them and like 3 police officers to subdue me. That's sort of the state that I had worked myself up into. It was a manic state that I had worked myself into over that course of that week leading up to it. And thankfully, they, even though they both, including my sister, were in different places. I was in Charlotte at the time. My brother was in Cleveland. My sister and nephew were in Atlanta. But the way I unraveled that week, they knew I was in distress, and they came. And ultimately, they were there when I just completely.
What were the signs? How did they know?
Just because of the way I was, the things I was talking about, I was hallucinating. I was seeing and hearing things that didn't exist. And I was talking in a way that they just couldn't, they knew something was wrong. And so, throughout my life, I was apparently, again, this diagnosis came at the age of, I think I was 50 at the time. I learned from my doctors that diagnosed me that most people learn that they're bipolar 1, which is what I have, in their late teens or early 20s.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I'm in the like whatever 1, 2, 3 percentile who doesn't figure it out until later, partly because I was a very high functioning bipolar person, and the manic side of bipolar disorder actually helped me be as successful as I was.
Okay. That got you like hyper focused on your work. Go, go, go.
I could work, sort of my calling card, my hallmark throughout my career, even starting from when I was a kid, was that I outwork everybody. You can't outwork Terry, and I think I'm above average intelligence. I think I'm a above average athlete, but there's no way that I would have done the things I've done academically, athletically, and business wise, career wise, without my work ethic. Yeah. And, literally days, especially earlier in my legal career, I could work for like 3 days solid without sleeping. Literally.
Geez.
Yeah.
So when you look back now, aside from those manic episodes where you're, working for 3 days at a time, can you see what now appear to be warning signs like, oh, like I had a big dip there or something like that?
It's the manic stuff. Again, the manic stuff I didn't start to, as I look back now, it only becomes really apparent to me sort of later in my life, probably in my 40s. I started to, there was this, it was more anxiety with it than when I was younger. And so when I look back at those times, it sort of were some of the warning signs. And my ex-wife, she actually, after I was diagnosed, she was sort of like, yeah, there were some times when you would, especially whenever I was dealing with, like challenges, whether it be professional or personal, I would get very, very like animated and very intense in my need to be like confrontational and sort of leaning into that side of it. When I was younger, it was there, I couldn't really see it. And again, when I talk to friends about this, they say, oh yeah, especially some of my fraternity brothers who, I would call them at like 10 o'clock at night after being up for 3 days. And I'd be at my office and I'd be like, what are you guys doing at work? You guys need to go home, be with your families. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, what you're and so when I talked about them afterwards, they would say, yeah, we can, like, you were like really doing we thought you were like Superman. Like we couldn't get it. So there was some of that. On the depressive side, I really didn't, the depressions became longer as I got older. And I experienced it sort of the hardest whenever I went to, when I got my career aspiration. And then I could really feel, I began isolating. I began, just experiencing some really dark times, which I just I kept it all to myself because that's just how I've always operated. So, yeah, not a lot I can see. Again, I was so high functioning. I think people were actually afraid to, even if they did see things, it would be hard for them to like say, hey dude, you need to chill, or because I was always so successful. And so it was sort of a double-edged sword for me.
Was there something that triggered that psychotic break that, eventually led to your diagnosis?
There's not one particular event. There was a number of things that happened. One of the things that my doctors believe that was sort of a seminal event was when I actually retired, because from practicing law, sort of the year before, because it was at that point that I lost a lot of my sort of life structure and a lot of like where I could normally point either my, depression or my manic side of it, particularly the manic side. Like I could use that as fuel for work. Whenever I stepped away from practicing law, I lost that thing that, again, from the time I was a child, there was always something that I was gunning for, and
it was grades, it was athletics, and it was law school, and then the career.
Yeah. The thing where I could, especially on the manic side, where I could put that manic energy and that was constructive for me, it became destructive when I didn't have something around me to pour it into, And so I think that was one of the big things. I had also, in that, leading up to that event as well, I had been going through a lot, personally. My marriage, dissolved. And again, in part because of, some of the emotional stuff and mental health stuff that I was going through that I wasn't aware of. But all of that was as well. I lost, my grandmother basically a year before, who's somebody very important in my life. I lost both my grandmothers in that same year, but, so that happened. And then, to some people who aren't dog people, this will sound silly, but just like a month before, I lost my dog, who was literally
It's a
my
big
best
deal.
friend.
That's a big
And
deal.
and so yeah, there were these events that were happening, and I was not good at ever reaching out for help, or the way I
Why?
dealt with
What?
things my whole life
What?
was
Why was it so hard for you to raise your hand and say, "I need some help"?
um it was just how I operated. I never I you know, this will like I don't recall asking for help for anything real. I've always just figured stuff out. I never really had a mentor in the legal practice. I never, like, again, I would learn from people, but from observing. I'm an introvert naturally. Um, and so, and that's how I did, like, even like growing up, my parents talk about how, I never asked my parents for help with homework. I never got anything but A's from sixth grade through the end of high school. I was a valedictorian in my high school. I would come home, do my homework, go hang out with my friends or watch TV. Like I didn't ask for help,
Do you think this was compounded by the fact that you're a guy? Was it harder as a guy to ask for help? Was it harder as an African American male to ask for help?
I think both. I think the way that I was socialized, and again, I always felt beyond loved and supported by everyone in my family. Right. And I think a lot of it comes from, being a man, being a black man, watching my dad, who is the quintessential, whatever you want to call it, American dream, story of pulling himself up by his bootstraps, the oldest boy of 8 kids, growing up on welfare with a single mother. He was put out of the house when he was 16 because my grandmother couldn't feed him anymore. He was the first person in his family to go to college. He went to college on a football scholarship. Started out as a teacher, couldn't feed us. So he decided he's going to go into sales. And so, and just, and I saw how my dad took care of his extended family doing what he did. I saw how my dad sacrificed, and my mom too, to get us, moving us out of low income, housing development area, living beyond their means so that we could go to better schools. And I don't know I think, it's just sort of seeing that and seeing how my dad did. I never saw my dad cry or complain. And he would tell us some things that definitely marked me and, it sort of framed the way I saw the world. And I tell him about he doesn't remember some of the things he said to me, but as a kid, and I was that way. He would tell me things and I would latch on to them. And
Like, so what's one of those things you remember?
There were 2 things that were, I guess made the most impact on it. The first one was, I think I was like 10 years old, 10 or 11, whenever Top Gun came out. I told my dad after we watched the movie, I basically wanted to be Maverick. And so I didn't realize that. Yeah. Anyway, and so I asked my dad, we're leaving the movie theater. I'm like, Dad, how do I get to be a Navy aviator? How do I get to fly jets? I want to fly jets. My dad says, he had no idea. So he said, you go to the Naval Academy. Oh, I said, oh, okay, great. How do I go to the Naval Academy? He said, get all A's. So I got all A's from that point. Never got anything, never considered getting anything other than an A from that point forward. And ultimately got my appointment to the Naval Academy. Decided not to go. But anyway, that he just, like, he would say these things and it was for me, it was like, he said and so I go and do it. The other thing was, when we first moved from basically an all black part of town to predominantly all white area, we were one of the first black families to move to this, where I eventually went to high school. Again, it was a public school, but it's still one of the best 1 or 2 public high schools in Pittsburgh, right, in the state of Pennsylvania. And my parents specifically moved there for the purpose of making sure that we were able to go to the best possible schools, give us the best opportunity. Well, The first time my dad took me to, like, in our household, like, you couldn't play sports unless you had grades. Like, that was first and foremost. But it was sort of, there were some conversations my parents had with us that, all black parents have with, I don't say all, a lot of black parents have, when, especially when you're moving your family into a new all white area. There were things that happened as our house was being constructed that my parents didn't tell us about until we were much older. Things that are beyond the pale. And my sister and brother and I, we were in fights constantly because people would say things. But one of the things that my dad told me, this is probably the most impactful thing that he ever said to me in my entire life, it sort of framed my life, is when he was signing me up for, I think it was it was either football or baseball. I can't remember which one, but he told me, and geez, I'm almost getting choked up when I when I think about this now, but he told me that no matter what I did, he's like, you can't just be good. He said, you have to be great. He said, you have to be great or they won't let you play. And and he said, because if you're just as good as the other guy's gonna play. All right. Jeez.
There was a different yardstick for you.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're black.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And yes. And so my, whatever it was, 8 or 9-year-old mind took that and it became like, that's life. It wasn't just like literally. And my dad wasn't saying it. I mean, he was saying it out of, love, obviously. And there would be examples of when where it would actually play out, where even if I was, there would be a reason for me not to, get, and there were examples. My dad would there would be times when in, life where my dad in his professional life, where he would, hit the proverbial glass ceiling. He was in sales first with Xerox and Digital and Sun Microsystems, and then he finished his career at FedEx. But he, there would be times he would come home and tell us how I'm sorry. Jeez. He'd work. They'd give him the worst territory. And he'd work his butt off. He'd build it up. He'd make President's Club. And the next year, they'd hand that off to somebody else and let them enjoy the spoils of what he had built. And, and there was only so far that he would be able to advance. And so, it was sort of reinforcing a lot of the stuff, some of those things that he would say to us. And again, I've told this story to my dad about the you can't be good, you have to be great thing. He doesn't remember saying that. He also didn't say it to my younger brother or older sister. So was what I found out. And so, but again, in my mind, just the way, and I'm not sure that they would have reacted in the same way or would have had the same impact on them. It's, some of it is just who I am.
As parents, sometimes you recognize that you have to parent each kid a little bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a powerful and painful message to be receiving and having reinforced as you're a kid. Now,
Yeah.
Terry, I want to make sure that we leave
Mm.
enough time to talk about HomeStretch. But before we get there, you had another health scare.
Oh yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
happened there?
Oh yeah. So just this past summer, I actually had to have an emergency surgery. It took about almost 7 hours to remove some blood clots, some blockages in my stomach veins. I have a pretty probably extremely high pain threshold, so I had been dealing with a lot of pain in my abdomen region for a while, and I can't even remember it. A while, a long, many months. I exercise every day, usually very vigorously. So, and it was just sort of part of it. I've dealt with, playing college football, being 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing, sort of pain is sort of like, yeah, it's part of it. And so I, this came a point this past summer where I was taking a lot of stomach meds and all kinds of stuff. And one day, thankfully, my sister lives just a few doors down from me. I had to literally call her and have her take me to the emergency room because, like, the abdomen pain was just so severe. So when I got to the hospital, they did a bunch of testing on me and found out that I had these blockages, these blood clots. And so ultimately, it was, they still haven't pinpointed it exactly. Part of the reason that do have some family history of blood clotting, but having them in the stomach in stomach veins is not normal. Um, Part of it they think was accelerated by, I take lithium because I have bipolar disorder. I take lithium, which makes sure that your brain runs on electrical pulses or whatever. So that makes it, all those things work properly. So they think that accelerated some of it. And then the other piece of it is they believe some of it was like induced by stress. And that's where I buried a lot of my stress. So it was those two. And they had noticed that based on the way some of the veins were bending, that they had been there for a prolonged period of time. And so again, they'll probably never know exactly what sort of caused the initial bleeding, but that's what happened. So yes, and it was the surgery again. It was 6.5 hours of surgery, very delicate, and you know, if it would have been done 15 years ago, my likelihood of survival would have been very different because the way they did it is um it's a miracle of modern medicine is all I'll say.
So, just in the last couple of years, you've stared down the barrel of death twice.
You could say that. You could say that.
How
Yeah.
does that impact the way that you look at life and business today?
Um I I think it's made me a lot more I'll say short-sighted, um which is what I needed. I again, probably since I was very young, and even more so as when I began my work life after law school, and I had a family, I became more and more uh, sort of focused on like being able to do things and see and control what happened, going forward. And um, a lot of time spent regretting maybe things that I hadn't done perfectly or the way that I would have wanted them to go. So I was, I guess the short way of putting it is I've become much more present in what I do and try to, as much as I can, deal with things, sort of day to day. And there are going to be ups and downs, and I can't. I've tried to give up as much as I can, trying to not only control other people, by hook or by crook, by either convincing them or whatever it is, and more so just focused on being in the moment, being present, dealing with what comes my way, having as few expectations about other people and what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And yeah, just trying to get into the moment and enjoying whatever it is the hell is on my plate right now, you know?
Are you better at asking for help now, or is this still Terry Hammons doing it mostly on his own?
I think I'm a lot better at asking for help. One of the things that I am, I think it's helped me do, sort of having these both the, being diagnosed with bipolar disorder as well as having these physical, my latest health issue is that I'm very transparent. I don't care to be the best at everything or anything, really.
How did you let that go? That's not easy to do.
Oh yeah. I think because one, I want to share my experiences. So that's why it's easy. I remember the first time we talked, you were mentioning just how like vulnerable you thought it didn't occur to me that that's what that was, because now and again, 10 years ago, I wouldn't talk about anything that, in my life that was going on that was like a quote unquote negative thing. Like now I'm happy to talk about my bipolar, I'm happy to talk about my, my blood clots and how that came about. And, even things like, fact that I'm, divorced and, my marriage fell apart again, so, but that's just life. That's part of my journey. So I think I am like, yeah, I'm not as concerned, very little concerned about what other people think. Because again, I'm trying to be present, and my journey is my journey. Everybody has, again, everybody's story isn't my story, but everybody's got something. I don't care who you are. Like it doesn't matter what you have. You've got something. So,
and it sounds like this sort of dissolving of your armor has been really helpful for you. And in that process, I believe 100% that you've been able to help other people with their stuff when they can see a strong, type A driven personality drop their cloak of armor and say, hey, here's me, here's my underbelly, here's all the stuff I'm dealing with. They're like, okay, I can talk about my stuff too. Have you seen that? Have you noticed that in just your personal interactions?
Yeah. I mean, definitely. And I've had the opportunity to speak, do some, as public speaking, I guess, and some other opportunities just to share stuff. And, and even with my friends and family, it's funny because my family is less, maybe understandably, like they don't talk about sort of my issues I thought, as much as freely as I do. Right. And, but me, I just honestly, I just don't care if you like, again, like people have a lot of times I'll say, oh, I'll tell people that I'm bipolar or whatever. They'll be like, they'll like clutch their pearls or whatever. I'm just sort of like, yeah, dude. Yeah. So is Kanye West. I just take my medicine, but everybody's got something,
Well,
but I hope it does help people. I actually do want to, at some point in time here very soon, I want to like, intentionally develop some type of, like public speaking, I don't know, presentation focused on men, Black men as well. In particular, I do think we struggle with reaching out for help, and especially around mental health stuff, and even just having a therapist and all of these things that everybody should be doing. So I want to talk about that and encourage people to do that. And I think by sharing my story, I think I can hopefully help more people to do that, to open up about it, because it's just, everybody's got a little bit of something going on that they can use some help with.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing some of your stuff, because that's going to help other people address theirs. Okay, now I want to get to, how did the opportunity with HomeStretch come about?
Yeah. So HomeStretch had been, it started out as a two-man operation. The two founders of the company there, Derek Schumann and Nick Lobert, they're based out of Cincinnati. These guys came up with this great idea to focus on. There's a bit of a niche in the uh, real estate market, it's sort of preparation market, where there's this area where the jobs are too small for like big contractors, but a little too big for just like a handyman. And so HomeStretch was really designed to focus on helping real estate agents resolve a lot of their pain points that they experience in trying to get the services that they need in order to get houses ready for listing quickly, for high value, and for high quality work. And so I think it's genius. We came across it. These guys, Derek and Nick, they started the company in Cincinnati in 2019. They didn't start sort of branching out until 2023, the end of 2023. It was at this point in time where I had been sort of fully leaning into the real estate side of things. I had stepped away from practicing law. And I had, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I had probably since 2009, I bought my first property, and that was sort of, I was something I was doing on the side while I was practicing law. I sort of backwards in a sort of unintentional way. When I moved to London, I sold my house in Pennsylvania, and then I bought a condo in Miami because my wife and I at the time, we thought, oh, we'll fly back and forth to Miami because we like to hang out in Miami, and it'll be great. We'll have this condo there. Well, we ended up having our daughter in London, so we never came back to Miami. But anyway, it was my first property, and I sold it 5 years after that because you recall back in 2008, market crashes. We buy this cheap condo in Miami, and 5 years later, we sold it for twice. So following on that, I would buy properties here and there. I leaned into that once in 2022, I guess it was. Well, yeah, when I walked away from practicing law, and at that time I had a portfolio of 6 or 7 properties in a few different states. And as my brother and I, who was partnering with me then, he came on board as basically my property manager for my various properties. And we were sort of struggling with turning over or doing make readies on our units, on our duplexes and triplexes that we had, to sort of get the units ready for our next tenants. And if we wanted to do flips of properties, it was hard to get consistently reliable contractors to do work.
You got to come in and fix stuff. You got to clean it up, get ready for the next tenant.
Just the basic stuff, nothing but again, especially if you've got a unit that you got to turn over and get somebody in, every day that goes by that unit is vacant, you're losing money. You're literally losing money. And so if you don't have somebody who's going to be consistent and they're going to be fast about it, even whenever you're flipping a house, that's a problem. Well, at this same time, I'm getting various, this is in 2023, I'm getting emails every once in a while from folks who are, they're these sort of like franchise consultants, and they're reaching out to me and say, hey, with this, based on your background, looks like you might be a fit for doing this ABC, XYZ. So I started to listen because I really didn't have anything else to do, didn't have any other ideas. And I started working with a couple different guys, and they started presenting me and then like HomeStretch appeared. Like,
there's something about this one that stuck out to you. What was it?
It was, everything was lining up because the opportunity, it sort of fit this pain point that we were experiencing on the real estate investment side. And everything that he talked about was sort of like, oh, wow, like, shit, we could use that. So, and then we're like, wow, this has to work. This is something that's going to work. And so I was the number 7, and there's now, I think there's close to 100 of these locations around the country. Our Cleveland operation was the number 7 franchise. And if you know anything about franchising, so if you're going to buy into a franchise, they have this thing, it's called an FDD, Fair Disclosure Document. And so that the franchisor has to basically present all this financial information to show you sort of what you're getting into. Well, at the time that we were signing up to do this, there was really no financial information. It was, it was the financial information that the founders had for their business, which had been ongoing already for 4 or 5 years. So, that wasn't going to be where we were starting out. And so, so it was a bit of a flyer, but we had such faith when we went to do the, they call it a discovery day. We were convinced by, it was the energy, the passion, it was Nick and Derek, and those guys just sort of, they ultimately made me believe, because believe me, it was a struggle to write that check, for the franchise fee, and without really, having any real, firm financial data to say, hey, if you do something like this, this is what you're going to end up with. There really wasn't that. And so, but we knew, like, the business, it all made sense. And we knew our experience that it was.
Yeah. So they explain the business model in a bit more detail. I'm selling a house. I want it to go for, top dollar. I want it to look good. I don't know, but the walls are dinged up. The paint, my kids' fingerprints are on it, and my furniture's all ratty. And, so you guys come in and you do what?
Yeah. So there's a number of things that are different. So what we do at HomeStretch is there's nothing new about it. Sort of what we actually do. We, like you say, we do clear outs, we paint, we floor, landscaping, handyman, and cleaning. That's basically what we do. All of that stuff. There are millions of people, contractors, who do all of those things all the time. The thing about the HomeStretch business model that makes it so different and makes it unique, even in the office presentation we did today for folks, they're like, there's nothing like this. Nobody does all these things. And it's how we do it, right? So the basic thing that we do, the part of that is that we market not to the individual homeowner. We market to the real estate agents, because it's, whenever somebody's going to sell their home, they're typically looking at their real estate agent to tell them what they need to do to do this. And so, in real estate agents, while they can do it, they don't want to do it. Why? Because they don't get paid to do that. And it just sucks up their time. Real estate agents want to sell houses. And so our business model is based on marketing to the real estate agents who, if we build a relationship with them, then they'll not only bring us that listing that they have today, but when they next get a listing that needs some work, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Whereas if you're marketing to a homeowner, it's a one and done deal.
One and done. And I may not even understand that I need your service. Maybe I don't recognize that. This is my house. It's beautiful. I've lived here for a long time. I think it's great.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
We go into houses all the time. People have red, pink, or blue kitchens, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's beautiful." And we're like, "No, nobody's gonna buy that."
So you develop a relationship with the realtor because that's an ongoing thing, and they recognize the value in it. And like you said, they don't want to put the effort into it because they're not getting paid any extra for that. They're busy with everything else.
Absolutely, and so that's the key, the cornerstone, I think, to the business model, is that it's designed. Yes, we're ultimately helping the homeowner sell their home for the highest dollar, but what we're really doing is all of the project management that goes on that the realtor is going to be stuck with. It's basically resolving the pain points that the realtor has whenever they're trying to sell a home. And the other issue that the realtors have is that when they recommend somebody, and this is the real challenge for the real estate agent, is that when they recommend somebody and then that somebody screws up, the client's mad at them. The client's mad at them. And so our business model, we have at a base level, we have 3 service level agreements that we have with each of our clients. And that is, one, you give us a call and we'll be out there within 24 hours to do the consultation, right? Yeah. See, look at your face there. You're like, oh, who does that?
That's fast.
HomeStretch does that. Yeah. Name, Joe the painter. He's not climbing down off of the ladder to come do a consultation on a job he may or may not get anytime soon. A couple weeks, he'll come out. We go out there because we have people dedicated to doing that. We're out there same day, something. You call us up, we might come out there. When we do cold calls to agents, we're like, hey, what projects do you have going on that we can help you out with? And they're like, oh, well, I've got one. Or what time can we meet you? We'll do the consult this afternoon. Can you meet us there? Right. So nobody does that. That's the first thing. Second one is 24 hours after we do the consultation, we'll send you a quote. Who does,
Again, fast turnaround. Yep.
And it is the most professional. We use all the technology, all the things, right? So we're going to get you a quote within 24 hours. And then the third service level agreement we have is we're going to start the job within 3 to 5 business days after you sign the contract.
Okay.
Again, agents, what we talk about with agents all the time, what time kills deals. That's what any agent's going to tell you. So the longer you wait, and they need to plan out things too. The agent needs to figure out, okay, when am I going to schedule listing photos? When am I going to schedule this? Right? They can't do that. If you're trying to manage a project of any size or scope, and you got to manage 3 or 4 different contractors, and try to just getting them to come out and give you an estimate. You're not planning, to do listing photos and it'll be 3 or 4 months before you can do that. Most of our jobs, even if we got to do 4 or 5 of the services, most of our jobs from the time we start, even from the time that you give us a call, assuming things go well and we get things signed up in an expeditious manner, we're going to be done in 2 to 3 weeks tops.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah.
Is there any data, Terry, that exists that shows somebody who uses your service is going to sell their house faster or for more money? Is there any way to extrapolate that?
Well, it's one of my slides in my presentation, and it's not necessarily our data or for our specific projects, but there's tons of data out there, and real estate agents have access to it as well. But on that shows that as you invest in your home, there's going to be an increase in the value, right? And so now some people don't necessarily make an investment in the things that are going to create the most value. And that's the things that we focus on, those cosmetic things where you don't have to necessarily break the bank, but you can do an $8,000 to $10,000 to $15,000 project and then get a return of, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. I mean, I have examples in my office presentation today where we did a $20,000 project. We did all of the services. It took us just 2 weeks to do that project. And the family ended up selling the home. They listed it for $100,000 over what they were planning to list it for when they were going to sell the home as is. And they got their asking price within 2 days of listing it.
Wow.
And so, yes, there's tons of data out there. Actually, I wish I had it memorized, but there's 3 data points on exactly that thing.
Is there a price range of home in which your services tend to make the most sense? Maybe somebody who's got, a different part of town or a smaller home selling for $100,000. Maybe it's hard to get the return on your service.
I don't necessarily know that there is a range. Now we've done $100,000 condos all the way up to $1.5 million projects.
Okay, that's a good range.
It's more a matter of identifying the fixes that are necessary to increase value. Now, I think everybody knows, most people know that it's the biggest bang for your buck is going to be in kitchens and bathrooms, right? And in any amount, usually the thing that's going to create the most value for someone when they're trying to sell their home, it's going to be all about just neutralizing your home. Like you were talking earlier about, everybody thinks that, oh, mom, this is beautiful. Who wouldn't love, blue or red walls in their living? And so when we go in there, we make everything as easy as possible for the clients because we put together color palettes and they're all just sort of neutral colors. We got paint, flooring, all the stuff basic stuff that you're going to need. And agents love it too, because we speak the same language as the agents. The agents know that, I can spend $2,000, painting the cabinets and the walls, doing some new tile, some LVP in the kitchen. And guess what? I'm going to get basically $15,000 to $20,000 of value for doing that little bit of work.
Is that what you would think is maybe the the lowest hanging fruit, like the biggest
Sure.
ROI lever that you can pull?
Absolutely. So it's definitely, it starts up kitchens and bathrooms. And then it's just painting and flooring. Like you do that stuff, you make it nice and neutral so people can walk into the home and visualize what it's going to look like. If you've got these, I don't call them crazy colors, but you got these different non-neutral colors in there, it's just hard for people to imagine it. And what the other thing that happens is, and this is what agents are mostly, when agents come into a home, they're looking at it and they're telling their clients, like, look, yeah, it might be nice for you. And it might even be like a fresh coat of green paint in your living room. And it might be beautifully done, right? The problem is that the person buying it, they're going to start deducting what they're going to pay you for the house because they're going to paint it. They don't care that you just painted it whatever color you paint. They're going to paint it. If they come in and they see white or, some light gray, light blue, something like that, that never enters their mind that, oh, I got to paint this room. Oh, I got to redo this carpet. Oh, I got to, you see what I'm saying? So it's at the end of the day, when somebody's looking at it, or at least the way the agents, a lot of times they're thinking about it is they're counseling their client is like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's great. It looks great. The problem is you're going to ask for this and people are going to be looking at your asking price and all these things, these cosmetic things that you have going on that aren't really neutral. They're going to start deducting from that. So you're losing money. And so just by adding a little bit of money to paint all of the rooms or to put some new carpet down, you're increasing the likelihood that you're going to get over your asking price.
What's the craziest thing that you've seen going into a house that you guys had to fix?
Oh my gosh. I remember the very first consultation my brother and I did, in Cleveland. And it's a story that will go down in infamy. We should, I don't have enough time to tell you about this, but we go to this house and I think the house, I can't remember what it was being listed for. It might have been 100,000 or so. So it is in a pretty tough part of East Cleveland. If anybody knows anything about Cleveland, it's a pretty tough part of town. We literally saw, as we're around the corner, we're next to a dollar. We're driving to the house. There's a Dollar General store on the corner there, and we're at the stoplight, and we're literally watching the Dollar General get robbed. We're seeing guys run out. So and we're like, what? And I'm thinking to myself, what have I done to my life? I am questioning every life decision I've ever made. I'm like, what are we doing? Anyway, we get to the house, and it's from the outside. It's not. I mean, again, it's a tough part of town. It's not that not that great. But anyway, no big deal. We got I literally did not know that people lived like these people live. Like the amount of it was just, I mean, I'm being harsh.
We're talking about like garbage, like filth,
there was just, I mean, all of the silverware in the kitchen was out on the counter and everything was in disarray. There were, I mean, mattresses on the floor and in the bedroom. I mean, it was quite like, and we, at this point, this is our very first consultation. We didn't have those little booties that we now had. I mean, I walk into the house.
You wanted those more to protect you from the house rather than the other way 100%. Around.
I wanted a whole hazmat suit whenever we went into this house. And it was just, I mean, this is the thing, like we've seen the hoarder situations. Like, again, I can't figure out how people actually live in these. Now, by the way, I love a hoarder situation from a business standpoint because now I don't do any of the work. That's the primary reason. I have guys that do the work for me, but those are probably our most profitable projects. There's very few people want to do it, can do it effectively, but we know how to do it very well. But hoarder situations, we've seen all kinds. We had a couple homes. We had one home in particular where it was an investor home. They hadn't had a tenant for probably 6-7 months. A raccoon had gotten into the house.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah. Oh, just imagine. I mean, it was horrific.
My sister used to have a business on the side where she would help people organize their homes, their closets, and she ran into some folks that were, full on hoarders. And,
Yeah.
she made a good point. She's like, oftentimes there's a mental health issue
Yeah.
going
Oh,
on
sure.
there. That they are
100%.
so depressed, they're so overwhelmed that they don't even know where to start. Like it just,
Absolutely.
they can't even look at it, or
Yeah.
they look past it.
Yeah. They don't see it, and they feel like it's like, and a lot of them, they become attached to it. Again, it's not rational.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So your growth is dependent upon making more relationships with more real estate agents, more realtors.
Effectively, yeah. Yep.
And how are you doing that? What is your mechanism for connecting with them? I think I heard you mention cold calling.
Yeah, I mean, that's at the heart of it.
That's what
cold calling. And then from the cold calls, the goal is to not only call the agents themselves, but to call office managers. That's the most effective way, because if you can get an office manager to invite you into their office to do an office presentation, then you have the time and the ability to really help the agents, to help it click for them. There is not an agent with, even a decent agent who understands their business, has any understanding of their business, that won't absolutely fall in love with what we present to them. And
it's a pretty easy sell for you.
Oh, it's an easy sell. If you give us if you can listen to us and again, our pitch, and if an agent listens to us when we do a cold call, if they listen to the first 20 seconds, they will be interested.
What's that first 20 seconds sound like?
Hello, Bob. How are you? Hey, this is Terry from HomeStretch. We just wanted to reach out to you, let you know about this great service that we're offering. We help real estate professionals like yourself get your homes ready to list. We do clear outs, we do painting, flooring, handyman, landscaping, and clean outs, and home cleaning. Why don't you tell me what you do to get your houses ready to list? And so it's just that. I mean, if you listen to now again, some of them they're just too busy. Some of them hate. Now we get hung up on occasionally because they just don't want to hear cold call.
Yeah.
But if they take half a set to think about that question and answer it, that question is going to lead to, I've got a whole list of other questions that are going to come after that. Because what that agent is going to begin to talk about when I ask them, what do you do to get your houses ready to list? They're going to start talking about their pain points.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, and they may even say, I've got a guy. And I was like, oh, you got a guy. So what does he, when your clients call him, how quickly does he get out there to give them a quote? How quickly? Oh, really? Can he offer you financing options? Oh, really? Oh, does your client, we have pay at close options where your client doesn't have to pay anything until they say,
holy cow. That's brilliant. Because some of these projects you're talking about, they're thousands of dollars.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
the seller is not going to be cash rich for a lot of them until they move that home.
Oh, yeah. And
so you guys sort of carry the note on that.
Absolutely. We've got 4 different financing options now. We're about to have a 5th one. But we work with, now our premier finance we call it pay at close financing, but we have a strategic partnership with Notable, who does basically pay at close financing for professionals, home service professionals like us. We have our own, HomeStretch has our own partnership with them though. Our partnership gives up to $50,000 of funds to do projects. And the cool thing about Notable is that they are able to use that 50,000 to do anything that's related to the sale of the home. So let's say our project is 20,000, but they need to get their HVAC repaired, or they have moving costs, or they have, you name it. If it's related to the home, they can draw down from that 50,000 and they don't pay anything out of pocket. It's all paid out of their closing proceeds.
Wow.
So yeah,
brilliant.
this is the third or fourth thing about us that makes us completely different than any your just sort of, run of the mill general contract.
Yeah.
And we, by the way, we don't even refer to ourselves. We're not contractors. We are the go-to company for all of your
You're
home
like a full
preparation
solution
services.
provider. Yeah.
That's it.
So I
That's it.
imagine that you will answer this question a bit differently today than you would have just a few years ago. But what's your superpower, Terry?
Wow, I haven't thought about that in a while. Yes, it definitely is different now. I would say, wow, I would say it is. I'm able to see the the big picture. I've always been somewhat of a uh, global strategic thinker. Um, Notwithstanding the fact that I'm a lawyer by training, I'm not the most like detail oriented guy. I probably should be, but that's not my real strength. My real strength is like seeing how the pieces fit together, seeing how the parts work. I was, even when I was practicing, as I began to in my career, I was noted for being a strategic thinker, but also a team builder. So, because a lot of I mean, literally my first job as a GC, I built the law department. It was a company that had been publicly traded for 25 years. They had no in-house legal capacity. So I like built the law department. But before that, my job as a deputy general counsel was building out a global team of lawyers to support our growth around the globe. But it's being able to see the big picture. And a lot of that, I think, comes from practicing law, working on, multi-billion-dollar transactions, and basically quarterbacking these big deals, which is what I did. So I think that's my super strength, or my superpower, and that I see the big picture. I'm never going to be the master of all of the things but I know how to pull people in, see, and get the folks in the right place and see the bigger vision as they're coming together.
Terry, I've just got one more question for you today. But before I ask it, I want to do three things. First of all, if you want to get in touch with Terry, you got two options. He's given us his cell phone number, 216-367-7609. We'll put it in the show notes, but again, it's 216-367-7609. Also, his email address is terry.hammons@home-stretch.com. And Hammons is spelled Hammons. So terry.hammons@home-stretch.com. And again, we'll put that in the show notes. Also, as a reminder, if you want to get your employees access to benefits that won't hurt them financially and carries a financial upside for the company, reach out to me at addbackbenefits.com. Finally, if you want to take just a moment to leave us a comment or review on your favorite podcast app, we will be forever grateful. So last question for you, Terry. You and I reconnect 1 year from today, and you are celebrating something big. What do you hope to be celebrating 1 year from now?
That we are on pace for doing $1 million of business in Cleveland.
Just in Cleveland.
Yeah, just in Cleveland. So, Phoenix and DC, we're still, those are newer opportunities. The market opportunity in Phoenix and Cleveland is probably in Phoenix and DC is significantly bigger than what it is in Cleveland. So, but we'll eventually get there in those places. But Cleveland, we need to be tracking for that $1 million mark this time next year.
Nice. Well, Terry Hammons from HomeStretch, I want to be the first to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Anthony. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you and this opportunity. I had a lot of fun.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.